Welcome to NC Positive. Today we highlight Esther Alegria for her significant impact on the pharmaceutical industry. As former CEO and co-founder of API Therapeutics in North Carolina, she has held leadership positions, served on national and international boards, and provided executive advisory and business coaching services. Dr. Alegria is also a best-selling author, known for her book, From Just Esther to Poly-Esther. She will inspire you with her amazing journey of pursuing her dream.
Thank you so much. I'm super excited to be here with NC Positive and share a little bit about my life and my journey professionally and my personal journey with all of the audience. So I have an education in chemistry. I have a doctorate degree in chemistry, and I did my career in the biotech industry. So I have over 25 years of experience developing vaccines and drugs for rare diseases.
Please tell us about your journey in education.
So my education, I did my PhD in the University of Hawaii and a postdoc at the University of Virginia. Eventually came to the NC State to do a scientific assignment, and eventually got into the industry here in North Carolina.
How did you discover your desire to work in the pharmaceutical industry?
When I was a young girl, and I'm talking about elementary school, right? A typical girl, you want to be a dancer, then you want to be a teacher. But something started capturing my attention, and it was that science and math was easier for me than other subjects. So I became very interested in learning more and more and more about science. Then by the time I'm in high school, in Puerto Rico, the biotech and the pharmaceutical industry was exploding. So I went first, before I did the PhD and my bachelor degree, I did a 2-year degree on technical engineering. And that prepared me to either work in manufacturing in the pharmaceutical or in the laboratory. I started in the laboratory. And you can imagine me telling people, I work at Warner Lambert, and we are the makers of this drug or that other drug. And some neighbor will say, oh, I use that drug. I make it, And what that did for me, it created such a feeling of legacy. And that's when really became very clear to me that the industry that I was going to do a career was going to be the pharmaceutical industry, because I wanted to help people that were sick and that needed to have great therapies. And that's when the idea of I need to get a graduate degree, because I would just don't want to be in manufacturing or in the lab. I want to be the leader that is developing the new drugs.
What advice do you have for people beginning their professional careers?
Young people tend to think that you have to have everything planned to have a perfect career. And the truth of the matter is, careers are not linear, and your dreams sometimes are not linear either. And you keep changing your aspirations over time. And that's how I describe my career. One thing I knew I wanted to break out of poverty. I knew that since I was a teenager. And I knew that to break out of poverty, I needed to get educated. And I saw education as my ticket to get to a point where I was financially stable and financially independent. And education was definitely for me the center of that journey.
How did you adapt to a new language and the new culture as a young professional?
Not everything is easy, and certainly for me, it was not easy. And let me give you an example. I moved, this is 1982, I moved to North Carolina, to Fayetteville, Fort Bragg, for military reasons. And there is me, not knowing English, with 2 babies, very young. I was a young mother. And how do I start communicating with people? Just start there. Now, I have this big dream that I was going to have a graduate degree, in science, because, I wanted to enter the biotech industry. Well, how do you start? You don't have the financial means to get, to college. you don't have the language to begin with, right? So I like to share a story that when I decided to go for it, I reached out to a lot of different friends and family members to pitch in, for my initial registration fees. And then once I was in, now the question is how I'm going to understand the professor. Well, I used to write in my notebook everything what the professor will write in a blackboard. And at home, with a dictionary, I would translate whatever was in my notebook, plus I would read the book and translate what was in the book. And that's how was my first 2 to 3 years of college, just doing a lot of translation. Was it exhausting? Yes. Did it took me more time than the average person that knew already the language? Yes. But I was so determined that that was my dream and my ticket to get out of poverty that I was not letting anything get in the middle of that. So I put the extra effort. By year number 3, I started understanding more English. I started actually being able to talk back and answer back in English. And when I opened my eyes, I was bilingual, which was an accomplishment on itself.
As a young mother, how did you manage your education and your children?
I had a boy, Jesse, and a girl, Maria Elise. They were 5 and 1 when I moved. When I look back, I don't know how I did it. Juggling, 2 kids, juggling being a wife, a mother, and being a college where college was being so demanding of my time. But what it took was for me to make strategies of priorities. And I knew college was important. I knew my kids were very important. So I tried to focus my priorities on those 2. And there was a lot of situations, just to give you examples, where I was invited to, let's go after college, after class, let's go to, have dinner or have lunch or have whatever. And I will always go back to what my priorities were. My priorities was education and the kid. So I started taking decisions about where do I spend the time. And that's how I managed, to do what I needed to do. Now that my kids were out of the house and now I'm a grandmother, now I do all the things that people do when they're young, I'm doing it. I did it basically after my 40s. I would say for the mothers that are working and the mothers that are studying, I know it's tough. And I know sometimes they're biased about when they learn that you are a mother. A bias that, she may not complete the education because she has kids, or she may not, really excel at work because she has other commitment. Those biases exist. I'm not saying they're real, but they exist. And you have to be mindful of those biases. But it's about prioritizing your time in what you value. And I think there's time for everything, and there's time to make a balance. And it's just choosing what those priorities are for you. And you can do it. You definitely can do it.
Please tell us about your professional journey after graduation.
So I started working as a professional with Wyeth. Wyeth was a pharmaceutical company that had a big division of vaccines. And that was when I started in research and development, developing vaccines for pneumococcal bacteria. From there, I went to Biogen, and in Biogen, I was more working on rare diseases such as multiple sclerosis, hemophilia, diseases that didn't have much out there to treat patients, and that was our focus, rare diseases. I had my PhD when I started in Wyeth, and I started, obviously, as a scientist, I started in research and development, and that was my first career path. And from research and development, I jumped to compliance and quality and regulatory. And that gave me a different picture of what the industry was all about. So it's not only doing the science, but it's also managing the regulatory compliance if you want to put drugs in a global environment. So I was able to deal with, what are the regulatory requirements in Europe, in Brazil, in Australia, United States, Canada, and that was such a great career move. And I go back to what I said earlier about careers are not linear. And you have to take the opportunities when they come. And when I was offered that position, I didn't doubt to say yes. And after probably a week into that position, I was like, this was such a great decision.
How have you handled workplace challenges?
I think times have changed, but I will say tend to be dominated by males. And certainly I found myself, for most of my career, being the only woman, in the table when we were doing, the team meetings and the executive meetings. And yeah, I will say, yes, I saw the biases, and I saw even me when I was doing talent management, and I would present a woman that could be ready to be promoted. And it was different than when I presented a male. And there was a lot of expectations what a woman needed to have to be promoted versus a man. And sometimes I would cut on that, and I would say, wait, I see the difference in treating these two, employees. So the bias are there, and I certainly saw them. But this is my advice always, is you always need to be at the table with what you bring. And I was bringing to the table a scientist. I was bringing to the table a manager. I was bringing to the table somebody that can think globally, that can think strategic. And I left to the side that, I'm a woman, I have an accent, I'm short, I'm from Puerto Rico, all of that I left it behind. Is what I'm bringing to the table, and that's really where I focused thoroughly when I was in my work environment.
Why is learning the culture so important within a professional environment?
So I had in my organization over 1,000 people in different parts of the world. It was a global organization, and all the vice presidents from the different manufacturing plants were reporting to me. I had a dream that I was going to be in the biotech industry, and I was going to have a role of executive. I was going to have a role of a leader. That dream, really guided me to how I was going to treat managing the language and the culture. And you have to learn the culture. I live in Denmark, so I have lived in Hawaii. I have lived in Puerto Rico, in North Carolina. North Carolina is at my heart because most of my life I have been in North Carolina. But I have lived in different places, and it doesn't matter where you go, you have to learn the culture. And you have to immerse yourself in that culture and not try to change it. And so I think for me, it was more to learn how things get done and how people dress, how people talk, what are the activities to have entertainment, and you just how they cook, and you just learn to appreciate those things. Certainly, you always going to bring what your mother cooked for you to your table. And there's things of your own culture that are never going to go away. But when you are in a place that is different, you adapt. So you can imagine Danish are, most of them are very tall. And so there is me, somebody with an accent, somebody short, somebody that was not Danish, and they all are tall. I'm the leader of the project, and they are reporting to me. And I have to say that things that I learned, just to give you a couple of examples. In Denmark, you work 35 hours a week. And you have 6 weeks of vacation a year. This is plus the holidays. And 3 of those weeks of vacations have to be taken together. So when you do the math, you realize, oh my God, I'm going to be leading a site that has less working hours in a year than the site that I was leading in North Carolina. On the other hand, the production needs are the same. So how I'm going to work so that I can increase the productivity in the processes so that we can be as successful in regard to production as the North Carolina side that I used to manage to. And I have to say, I learned from the Danish, they are very productive mindset, and they are very focusing on the working hours. I used to love to walk the floor and see what people were doing and engage with them. And I will find all of them really focusing on their work. And they don't chat with each other here. No, they are focusing on the work. They will go to lunch and they will chat at lunch, but when they are working, they're working. So what I learned is when they work, they're very productive, and they are always looking for how to improve the process. And that's a constant thing. So by the end of the 2 years that I was there, the accomplishments were amazing.
How can you hold on to your own culture when you're in a new environment?
You know, there's something about appreciating cultures, different cultures, but there's something about too sharing a little bit of yourself. And I decided in Denmark that every month we were going to have a bell ringing, because we were, having a lot of metrics that we needed to meet to complete the project. And I said, we're going to have a bell ringing every month if you meet the metrics. So the first month, certainly, they meet the metrics. And instead of doing a formal bell ringing, I came out with a cowbell, and I started playing the cowbell with salsa tune. And surprise to me, they all stand up and started dancing like salsa. And when I was done, they started, more, more, more. And I'm like, oh my God. And I told them there's going to be more, but next month if you meet the metrics. And I tell you, they will do anything to meet those metrics just to have the time to do the salsa dancing. And then I learned that Danish people are actually salsa lovers. And I didn't know that little detail, and that was actually very nice for me to learn that.
How do you encourage future leaders?
So let me tell you a trick that I tell young people to do. In your life, you're going to run into role models all the time. And what I used to do every time I encountered a role model, I would say, why do I think that person is a role model? Sometimes the answer to that question was, I like how collective this person talk, how to the point this person talk. Sometimes it was because how well they run a meeting, and different things. And every time I saw something from a role model that I like, I stole it. Right? I said, okay, I don't have to reinvent the wheel. They have been successful and they do good, and I want to use this characteristic of them, or this skill, or this, and I want that to become my skill too. And I will ask them, how do you do this? How do you do that? And I will learn it. And from every single role model that I encounter in my career, it could be a boss or it could be somebody else, I learned something that I took upon myself to actually do it. Something that I learned in leadership, especially if you want to be a leader of leaders, you have to develop leaders. You cannot grow in your career if you do not develop leaders. If you don't develop leaders, you're going to find yourself doing all the work and having to do everything, and having people that cannot do the activities by themselves. So I took upon myself that every time people reported to me, I was going to be their coach. I was going to be their fan. I was going to be someone that will help them grow. What that did for me as a leader is the more capable they were, the more time I had to be strategic, to start thinking in the future. And always, by the time I got promoted to the next level, I always had already a leader that will take my position. What I encourage, young people and people that are maybe in the mid of their careers, if you want to be a leader of leaders, you have to develop the people that are with you. And the better they are, the better you will be.
How have you navigated your professional journey?
So my career, or the way I call it, my journey, how I started from being Just Esther, the scientist, to become the Poly-Esther with many different titles and roles. You know, opportunities came to me, I will say, and the decision was, do I stay in this company or do I jump to this other company? And I think I have 3 occasions where the decision was, yeah, I'm going to jump and go to this other company. Why? Because it appears to me that that position that they were offering to me, it was more challenging. And let me tell you a detail. Some of those positions not necessarily meant a promotion. Some of those positions meant sometimes just a lateral change. But I did it because it was a challenge, because I was going to learn something that my old position was not providing for me. So I moved from YF to Biogen, and that was the great decision for me. And what did I learn? I learned a lot of processes that I didn't know. And in Biogen, I was able to grow to the higher levels of senior VP of global manufacturing, but that didn't end there, right? When I left Biogen, I decided to be a founder and entrepreneur. And my God, I don't know what I was getting into it, because being an entrepreneur is probably the toughest thing I have done. And so I founded a company to find a solution for pulmonary fibrosis. And I started leading the company as a CEO. So I went from putting together a board of directors, putting together a scientific advisory board, putting together clinical advisory board, putting together the team, and start doing a lot of the animal testings that are required if you want to conduct clinical trials. And I did that for 4 years, and oh my God, did I learn. I learned so much. And it goes to the point that I have learned through my journey is every time you take a challenge, you're going to be a better professional. Why? Because you expose yourself to learn that you didn't know. And now I consider myself and in a really much better position after going through that experience. And my journey has an end, right? Right now, I'm working as an executive advisor and coach for the biotech industry, and I'm enjoying my work. I'm also part of board of directors of companies such as Teres, the Puerto Rico Science and Research Trust, and I'm enjoying that role because I'm giving back. All the things that I have learned, I can put it into action and help others do better.
What skills contributed to your success?
I live by the calendar, and I started that when I was in college. And let me give you an example, because I used to drive crazy my family. I knew the test was 3 months from now. That was in my calendar. And in my calendar, you will see a month before the test, start studying. I have the little details in my calendar. And then I will put no emotions, and I will follow that calendar. And that's how I was able to master the classes, get extremely good grades, mainly A's and some B's. And I was always able to be on time. And I did my PhD in 4 years, which was a record time. In my professional life, I do the same thing. I have my calendar, I follow my calendar, and I have my personal calendar too. So with that, what I'm saying, one skill is you have to be organized so that you can maximize the use of your time. And so that's one. Find a way to organize yourself so that you maximize the use of your time. But beside that, I think another is the attitude of persisting, believing that you are a persistent person, so that when life brings you a challenge or something takes you, out of your way to meet your dream, that you can very quickly persist and go back to following your dream. I have my values of what is important to me. Family is important to me. Friends are important to me. And so does work. and my professional life is important to me. So what I do is I schedule or in my calendar, if you just look at my calendar, I make sure that every weekend I have something that involves my family and my friends. And I love to host people in my house, so I'm always opening the doors of my house to host events. So that's how I found to have a balance. So if I work from Monday to Friday, for example, and I was really very heavily working from Monday to Friday, I will make sure that Saturdays and Sunday were filled of activities with the family and friends. And when I took vacations, I make sure my vacation was with family and friends. So it's really focusing your time on what you value, and that will create a balance.
Did you face any other challenges?
There were other obstacles, right? I went through a divorce. After I finished my PhD, I went through a divorce that was very challenging. I don't think people marry to get divorced. So you can imagine I was just starting my career, and now I'm going through this turbulence of a divorce. And what I decided to do at the time is to say, you know what, I'm gonna put it in a bucket, my emotions of the divorce and all of that, put it in a bucket and find someone that you can talk about it. I learned to put the situation, I would say very simple, in a box, and I decided who was going to be in that box and who I will use to talk about the divorce in that book. And what that did for me is, my work didn't get impacted. Mental health is as important as your physical health, and that have helped me enormously, really, in having a pretty normal life, if you will, even in the presence of emotional distress.
Why did you choose North Carolina?
North Carolina is in my heart. You can imagine I got here at 24, and now 43, almost 43 years later, I'm in North Carolina. And although I went and lived in Hawaii, I went to live in Denmark, I went to live in Boston, always I returned to North Carolina. And North Carolina has become home for me. My 2 kids are settled here, my grandkids are settled here. So when I think in North Carolina, I think home. And North Carolina has been very good to me in many ways, right? The people in North Carolina are extremely friendly. And there's a lot of diversity also in North Carolina. So it's an opportunity really to learn much more about your own country and other countries. So that's the second part. And then the third part, I think education being so important to me. North Carolina is a place where there's really, really very good universities, and the opportunities to expand in your education are there, and you can definitely pursue them.
How did you come to write your first book?
One thing that happened to me through my life, every time I told someone the story of my life, somebody will say, Esther, you have to write a book. Esther, you have to write a book. And I had the title already. And they were like, surprised with that. I said, no, it's going to be called From Just Esther to Poly-Esther. Because that's exactly what my daughter, who saw me going through all the transitions, that's what she used to tell me. Mommy, you went from Esther to Poly-Esther. When we started launching the book, I used to say, if I touch only one life, that's all I care, one life, then it was worth it to go through, the project of writing a book. But the truth is that it has touched more than one life. And when I read the reviews, people that never knew me or never, and they talk about how the book have touched them and have encouraged them to become better and to not to let the challenges slowing them down, but to overcome the challenges, that makes my day. So the book can be found in Amazon. Is the only place that I'm selling the book. If you happen to get a hold of the book, I hope it inspires you. And there's a lot of funny stories because life is fun too, even with the challenges.